sending out things to the participants, to the facilitators. They were all very stressed, not all, but those that are with the self-assessment tools, they were very stressed, and they said, we know nothing about self-assessment tools and so on and so forth.
But that's why they should have the report.
But you're also...
They don't have to.
And that's what I said, and plus you were addressed it, no? A little bit as a concept, because I think they think that they need to know about concrete.
And I'll be honest, that was the initial plan, because for us, that's why I wanted to work with Lasse and Michele, because they were more informed on the topic. What I think is that Lasse will, and I wanted to have Damago a little bit to talk to, and he's not here for now.
He's there?
Ah,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
He's been there all the time. So I send him here.
Yeah, maybe, just to have one place for everybody.
And should I then tell the facilitators to actually read if they haven't?
And many topics are wild city, cool contracts, and Breville hinterland. Always also an international
Hello, good morning to everyone on the other side of the camera. Welcome to the State of Play event, dissemination event for day 2. We have an exciting day happening. And as you noticed, you've joined us now through the YouTube, and as the seminar proceeds, we'll jump back to, with some of the participants, also back to the Zoom then for reflection sessions, but you can always follow us and what's happening next on the YouTube stream. So what's lined up for today? So can we have a look on today's program a bit? It will start with looking at competencies and capacities of digital youth work in the morning. And I'll pass you on soon to our work package leader, Veronica, who will introduce their team and bring some insight from that working process in the strategic work. We have an extra nice thing happening then over lunch, actually, in the stream. So we thought that you might be lonely when eating lunch alone at home looking at the stream. So we'll pair you up, if you wish, with a small study visit from Oulu. Again, so you'll see a bit of a video as well as an introduction to a project called Game Mode, which is very much linked to the building digital youth work activities for young people here in Oulu. And we're blessed and happy to have those people with us here, right? And in the afternoon then, so at 1 o'clock CET, we'll move on to what is considered in RT the Work Package 5 results, and that will be on the online blended and hybrid mobilities being at the crossroads. So the past years bringing, with COVID, a lot of changes also to the European programs, and how should we deal with them in the future, and how have we dealt with them in the past? Very good. One thing that we forgot to mention, well, not forgetting to mention, you see the results already of our one team member named Raquel, who's been doing graphic recordings of all the sessions. If you want to catch up from yesterday, you can actually see Raquel's beautiful graphic recordings already on Housespace, and by tonight we promise that they will also be on the official website of the DUW State of Play event. For the website is the Finnish National Agency one that you can follow. Right. Well, I think without further ado, Snezana, anything to nod for you without the mic? Very good. We're hoping you're ready for this and rested well, as I'm going to pass you on now to our right, where Veronica and Michele are already, and I'll pass it on to Veronica Stefan, coming from the Estonian NA, and presenting the results of the work package 2 in relation to the digital competences and capacities in youth work. Veronica.
Good morning. Thank you to our power team of facilitators here and the entire wonderful, small, but very dynamic and active team of organizers in Oulu. It's a wonderful day to be here. I hope it's the same for you. The topics we are going to cover today can seem a bit challenging, but I think they fit wonderfully in the discussions we started yesterday. So yesterday, we focused a lot on strategies, on the strategic approaches, on the policies that need to be developed. Today is a chance to look on the more practical side. What do we do actually with the competencies? How do we build them? How do we assess them? So we do dare to be hands-on with this discussion, but also dreamers, visionaries a little bit. The working group, and better said, the work package that I'm leading on behalf of the Estonian National Agencies for Erasmus Plus and Solidarity Corps started last year, and it will continue through this year. So our work is not done. It's still in, let's say, in the middle a little bit. We have worked hard together with the team, but also with a series of experts. And today I'm happy to have with me two of these wonderful experts. One is Michele here in the studio with me, Michele Di Paola, and on the other side of the screen you will see in a little bit later, Lasse Siurla. So two wonderful experts, I said, where we did something and what did we do? Well, the working group, as the name says, focus on digital competencies and digital capacities for youth workers and youth work organizations. I know. So we are talking about digital transformation in its broader sense. Where did we start? Well, we do like to build on things. We do not start from scratch. And in this case, we particularly looked at two moments. One was the Council conclusions, the EU Council conclusions, in 2017 and then in 2019 on smart youth work and digital youth work. And then, of course, we wanted to build on the expert group that was set as part of the EU Working Plan 2016-2018. And what we did was to see what happened ever since. What did we do? Where did we look at? Well, first, actually, even before saying where we looked, it's what we want to achieve. We want to have this broader image of how these things happen, how capacities are being developed in Europe. And after that, we want to build tools that can help youth workers and their organizations to properly assess their competencies and build their capacities in the digital sector. And digital, indeed, it's not something that we could call a crisis response. In the COVID-19 era, we have experimenting a lot, but the process has started much earlier. And now it's time to consolidate it, to learn from what worked and what didn't, and learn how to do it strategically. Now, with this in mind, we do plan to develop self-assessment tools. And while they might not be so common in the youth sector or youth work sector, I think it's time to see how exactly they fit in our work, how they can be better used. And in this spirit, we did start a mapping process. During the past year, together with 10 national agencies, 14 in total part of our work package, but 10 that managed to put a lot of resources and working with national researchers, we did look into what are the competence frameworks that exist at the national level? What are the assessment tools that exist for youth workers and for their organizations? What are the training materials on digital youth work? And we did look on digital youth work as a topic, not on digital resources in general available in the sector. And while I did have a nice presentation somewhere here, I will be able to tell you that all this information I'm sharing today with you is also put in a report based on those 10 national reports combined with another European mapping we have done on our own. We have identified a wealth of information, a wealth of practices that exist through Europe. And the number was a bit impressive because it was tens of them that existed. And of course, it was our job to understand what could be scaled up, what could work better, what could be improved, or what is needed to start from scratch. These are the countries that have contributed to our work. And I really say it was a hard work, and probably our European report might not reflect all the findings there, and actually each of the national reports deserves to be taken into account for all national initiatives and any strategy that might be developed. So, because this is the state of the play. This is a first finding and a consistent one. From the Belgium side on Flanders, Cyprus, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Lithuania, Romania, and Turkey, these were the countries that worked a lot with us. Now, what did we look for? I said competence frameworks, capacity frameworks, training materials. What did we discover? Well, language is still a barrier, and I'm just mentioning that because in youth work we have been mentioning this over and over. It's good to have international resources available in English, but youth work is very much localized. And it's the same for digital youth work. Either it happens online or on-site, it's still important to have them available in the language youth workers use. And there are different levels of involvement, of engagement, of ownership, of recognition. And I dare make a little bit of clustering of all these practices we have identified. Out of the 10 countries, and I'm not including here the European wider mapping we did, I think they can be, let's say, grouped into front runners. And we include here the countries that had the highest number of practices and most established processes, right? So where digital youth work and capacities in this field happen constantly happen innovatively, in an innovative manner, but not necessarily. It's also more structured, institutionalized approach many of times. And that would be Ireland, Finland, and Estonia. And I think there is no surprise for many of us. But then we have also, I call it the middle group, the advanced ones, where we have some strong practices. We have practices on digital and media literacy, and this is the fine nuance. So media literacy has been here with us for a while. Digital competencies and literacy are starting to grow. And also in terms of terminology, there is a bit of nuance. And the emerging ones, where there is the good part of the countries we have had with us, are those countries that are experimenting a lot. And probably they might be the most innovative ones, but they are also with less established processes. So that's why I would call them emerging. And here you could have countries such as Lithuania, Romania, Iceland, Cyprus, Turkey. So different parts of Europe as well. It's not necessarily just one region. Well, what did we learn? And this comes a little bit closer to our discussion today. 4 competence frameworks and assessment tools dedicated to youth workers. Well, yeah, there are many competence frameworks, I said. There is a wealth of information we have discovered. There are very few, though, dedicated exclusively to digital youth work. And we didn't look just in the youth sector because, of course, if we want to learn and build something, we can also learn to look outside. Either it can be the educational sector, the formal education, of course, but also the private and other sectors. And unfortunately, even fewer of them were complemented by self-assessment tools. So it's one having a competence model which describes what competencies a youth worker should have to engage meaningfully in digital youth work, and it's another thing to assess them, right? To have the tools and the technical tools sometimes to do that. And again, combined to this, using assessment tools, but even competence model, designing training on digital youth work is not necessarily a wide practice. With this in mind, we did see many, many things. Of course, I put several on this slide, even more in the report. But I will say this, there are some frameworks, there are some references that appear quite often, at least in different countries. One is the European Digital Competence Framework for Citizens, DCOMP. And I mention this because this has been supported and created by the European Commission. It is a wider framework on digital competencies, so it's not only youth work per se, but it is still the most popular. We have an Irish practice, the Skilly Digital Pathways for Youth Work, where it's led by Ireland in a wider international partnership. And of course, we have Verke. For those of you who know, for those of you who don't, Verke is the Finnish Center for Digital Youth Work in Finland, who apparently is quite popular with other countries as well, especially in the Baltic, but also in other European countries who have used their resources and inspiration. But overall, we do have some sort of agreement that the European framework would be needed, and it is needed to harmonize the practices, at least for digital youth workers and their competencies. When we look at organizations, because maybe it's not quite the same, right? Talking about youth workers and separately about their organizations. The situation was a bit different here. Because while for youth workers, we did find more dedicated practices and competence frameworks, for organizations, not so much. And this leads us to other points, and that is, there is not so much a strategic approach to digital transformation in youth work organizations that could have identified. Of course, we didn't get to tap so much into the whys, why it doesn't exist, or why in general an organizational framework to develop competencies and capacities in organizations, in youth organizations, doesn't exist. But it is something we do know, and that is digital transformation. It is still dealt with by that tech person, right? That you have the IT guy that solves some of very specific yet limited issues, or some of them hired external experts and professionals. And on the other spectrum, we could find some other practices in the private sector. So it was maybe not necessarily the focus of our mapping, but it did come out, and we did get insights and learning points from them. In the, let's say, in the section of training materials, which was the scope of our mapping, we didn't find that many materials as we found practices. So basically different type of trainings that happen around Europe, and I mentioned them because the training materials were important, especially to understand if we would have a competence model working at the European level, then what would be the tools, the materials we could use to support those competencies, right? What we could provide the youth workers to actually work to develop their competencies. But the practices are there. So we might not have materials, or at least not organized materials, but we have practices. They are diverse. It's not a surprise to say that organizations from the youth sector are the drivers in many countries, especially what I call the emerging group, right? The countries that experiment a lot, but have fewer established processes. Very few of these training courses and practices are based on digital youth work, occupational standards, also because in some of these countries, these occupational standards don't exist, or even when they exist, they are not necessarily updated with the digital competencies. And I think it's important to keep in mind. And again, yeah, Ireland and Verke came in different ways mentioned due to their practices. But also that's adding to Finland, Estonia, and Ireland being the front runners. I think that becomes a bit self-explanatory. Now, what did we do? And here I come closer to introducing our experts today as well. To move towards this European approach, to have digital competencies and capacities. We tried, first of all, to analyze all this data, and we tried to do this together with an expert group. Michele and Lassi are part of 5 people that are champions in this field as well, and we were happy to have them on board. We did find something which is interesting, and that is we found a competence framework for youth work, for digital youth workers, that can be scaled up. And it's DComp youth work. So it's a derivative of that European framework we were calling Digital Competence for Citizens, DComp short, developed by our colleagues in Germany, Youth Policy Lab. But then we also moved further. We have concrete proposals and recommendations for a self-assessment tool, for a self-verification tool, which is kind of a test, and basically says I can assess my own competencies, but I can also test to which extent actually it's not just my perception of how advanced I am with a competence, but also being proven by the short test. So it's still in development. What we managed to have, and it is in the report, it's a prototype for one competence area for now. You can definitely check it later. We can discuss about this later as well. For youth organizations, we came with what we didn't have, first of all, and that is a draft proposal for a competence framework. There are different proposals on quality and on complementary steps. So it's not just about the tools itself, so what else we can do? And the report covers many of these things. Good. Then, with this in mind, I would like to move further to the first guest, right? And the first guest for today is Lasse. Lasse worked, just like Michele, on all the topics I've covered before. I hope we can hear Lasse, and Lasse is with us. And Lasse, for you, the question is, why do we need self-assessment in youth work? And what could a self-assessment tool or tools for youth workers could look like? Lasse, you have the floor.
Can't hear Lasse, so maybe something to fix.
Just bear with us with the technical challenges. Digital youth work is just like our event here. We have lots of technologies. We still have to master to use them fully. And I think it's part of the process we are all in. Patience is also required. Learning by doing is also implied.
And of course, we did all the tests before, and as always, everything was working, and now we have issues. As Juha was saying yesterday, gremlins in the machine. So let's see if we can get rid of the gremlins. Maybe Lasse, you can try to speak so that we understand if we can hear you. Not yet. Maybe you have a muted microphone, just to check, because let's start from the easiest things.
Yeah, turn on your mic, turn on your camera. Two basic things we've learned in an online event.
Still not hearing you. Still not. Let's all together root for the gremlins in the machine to go away.
I can use this time to tell you a little bit about Lasse, because I didn't do the proper introductions. Lasse is, let's say, one of our senior experts in youth work in Europe, and he has been doing a lot of research and publishing basically on so many things that you can imagine, from youth policy, youth and digital youth work, evaluation in youth work. He is from Finland, and he has been running here he has been leading some important organizations at the national level, but also the Council of Europe. So his expertise in European youth work is quite well recognized, and we were happy to have him. Lasse put a lot of effort and commitment in defining the draft competence frameworks we have, and we are happy to still work with him. But then what about, until we figure out the technological changes? We have Michele here. And we can move forward to our discussion on organizational competence frameworks and assessment tools. Let's start with that. Let's learn about what are those, right? How did we come up with what we came up, what they can find in the report, and what we should focus on.
Yeah,
Michele.
sure. So as Veronica was mentioning, apart from focusing on frameworks related to youth workers, we also try to understand what was there in the field regarding the capacity frameworks for organization, and what we found was even less. So maybe we move forward with the slides up to the point where, oh, it was there already. We show what we did map. So if we can have the slides on, it would be helpful. But still, basically what we could figure out and map for the organization were, as I said, even less. We were looking at another flavor of DG Comp, the DG Comp org, which was specifically meant for organization. And we also had another model which was made in Estonia called the Mirror, which was specific for formal system organization, so schools and universities to assess their digital readiness, as they say. And then, of course, there was another model prepared by Verke, which is kind of setting the floor also for the discussion about organizations. And then we had yet another one which was more specific for small and medium enterprises, so coming from the private sector, but still interesting as it would cover also topics like remote working or online collaboration among the staff and so on. And the last but not least was a tool, not exactly a framework, a tool called the Inno Box, which was again developed by Verke as a way to help and support the organization and the youth worker to innovate their practice with a guide through in different steps. Then what else? That said, we try to figure out how to squeeze all the results from these different elements in a framework, and then to find out how to build it. We ended up with a debate between two possible ways to do it. One being building a general model which could then be specifically adapted and customized to specific needs of specific organizations, and the other way was creating an actual model, so a working model with all the details and all the elements there just to be adopted and used. And the discussion, as you will see in the report, is still open and is still there. Anyway, and overall, we made it to define 5 key elements, key areas that were the most important ones to keep it as a reference in our framework. So now we finally got the slides. So these are the elements we were, as I said, analyzing. And you see Digicom.org, Digital Mirror from Estonia, the Verke tool, the other one for the small enterprises, and the Inno Box. As I was saying, we found 5 key areas that anyway we should use to assess the capacity of organizations, with up to 47 elements identified as subcategories. So without going into too much detail, these are the 5 main areas we think that organizations should assess their status in the digital transformation of their activities on behalf of leadership and management, because this is needed to organize the internal dialogue and align the staff towards common ground and common goals in digital transformation. We need in the organization an innovative working culture. As they say at Harvard University, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's not that much about doing nice and brilliant strategies, but really establishing a new culture about how to also include digital aspect in our work. And then, of course, as we also have seen yesterday, we need learning, training of youth workers and organization, able to arrive and promote young people digital citizenship through acquiring new knowledge, new skills, and new understanding. And then, of course, we need infrastructure. We can do youth work online, we can do youth work offline, we can merge them, but anyway, a strong and working infrastructure is needed, and competence about how to make it work is also needed. And then, of course, assessment. We need assessment on the youth organizations too, for 2 reasons and 2 purposes. The first one is as a way to reflect upon the activities, the projects, and the effects. And the second, also for management and stakeholders and funders to see and evaluate how the objective of digital youth work activities have been reached and to what extent. So these 5 key areas and elements are the ones that organizations should always take into account when assessing their own digital transformation. And as the assessment tool for organizations, this is what we find out and figure out. It should be something comprehensive but adaptable to different types of youth works and different local realities of youth work. It should be related to other possible management system or assessment system or evaluation measures anyway that the organization may have. It will need for sure constant revision and update, as we all know that things change, and in the digital domain they change even faster. And of course it can be possibly combined with additional other formats or specific participatory evaluation. It should have support, videos, tutorials, whatever, to explain and help people to use it. And it should be aimed at building a possible development plan also for the single youth workers through recommendation, peer learning, and this kind of activities. So very briefly and very quickly, but you can find a lot more in the report. This is what we find out and noted down regarding capacity framework and assessment regarding digital transformation of organization. But now I hear that we solved the problem with Lasse, so I would pass it over again to Veronica, and so that we can have Lasse explaining what we did regarding youth workers.
Thank you, Michele. Well, indeed, it is a lot of work, but as we are talking about mostly digital competencies and capacities, as Michele put it rightly, some of them can complement what it is in place or what could be in the general scheme and framework. But it's like this, right? Think, as you don't like to have digital or lack of digital services in public institutions, in public service, it's just the same we need to think of in the youth sector. And the youth workers need to get in this new century. And I know we are, and we have done steps, but now it's about doing this in a more systematical thing, which entails planning, hence a competence framework, and it needs assessment. And going back to assessment, we also move to Lasse, because Lasse, for you, the first question I was asking you to think of was also, why do you need assessment in general and youth work in particular, and digital youth work even more. Lasse? I think it's a bit of karma today. It's like magic, you know, 1 second works, the second it doesn't. No, it's okay. If it will not work, it will not work, and eventually we'll not be able to do much. We can take just another 30 seconds or so. And just so you know, we are living in a hybrid event right now, right? So most of you are online, some of us are here. I think this is also one of the learning points we had while compiling this 70 pages report.
Do you hear now me?
Lasse is here. Lasse, we start to hear you. And that was just to say, right, if we have started to master a little bit more online environments, hybrid ones are still something we need to improve, because probably if something is the future, the hybrid events and practices will be the one. Good, Lasse, thank you. So why? Tell us a bit about the whys here. Why do we need assessment in digital youth work, and why do we need assessments for youth work?
Okay, can you find my slide?
Perhaps? Yeah. Slides can be on again. Please.
It's
full slide.
It looks a little bit funny, but okay.
It's okay.
Now it's better, yeah. Now
Thank
it's better. Yes, I mean, our group worked quite a lot because, as Veronica explained to you, the youth field is very kind of dispersed and orients probably quite differently to digital youth work, and it's on a very different path. And apparently the first question that many of the people before engaging in digital youth work would be asking is that, what is it to us? What's the added value towards digital youth work? And that's why we in the group discussed a lot of this theme and trying to find out good arguments why that would be necessary. And one of our recommendations sure is that it's very useful for anyone to assess one's digital activities. And some of the reasons I put here down, I go very briefly through them, and it's up to you to decide. Maybe in the group you are discussing this in one of the groups, for example, and to reflect whether some of them is very important, whether some is not very important, whether there is an argument missing or something. We'd be very grateful for your kind of a comment on these things. Well, the first thing is that in European youth policy, as you know, one of the most fashionable tag words is quality youth work. And that means that apply also to digital youth work. So, in fact, this is about quality assessment of digital youth work. It's a way of showing the quality of digital youth work and making it transparent to anybody like this decision making or funding. So that's the main one reason for it. Another, maybe most important reason is that such assessment tools are there to make a kind of a systematic look at how you work in youth work, and then to be able to identify where are your strengths and where are the things that you need to be improved. So it's actually a tool for improving your own work. And according to experience, youth workers have been very satisfied for this kind of tool just because of this one. If you repeat the assessment review or assessment of your digital youth work yearly, for example, then you come up with comparative material, and then you can see whether you are improving, where you are improving, where you need to focus more, and so on. So it gives you another important possibility to have comparable, actually kind of a quantitative material of comparing your results last year and this year, for example. Then if you there is also a possibility of benchmarking and inspiration. I mean, if you get bad marks for engaging young people in your assessment, you can look for other assessment reports where your colleagues have got the highest marks, and then you could kind of phone up and ask, how on earth did you do that? And learn from your peers. And then of course, this type of evaluation is actually a complementary form of evaluation. We used to do hundreds of surveys after every activity, and we are not always convinced of what the results actually mean. But the well-developed assessment tool is quite concrete and reliable material, and it can also be used complementary and supporting to other forms of evaluation that you probably have to anyway carry out. And one reason is that also that this tool can be linked to your education and training needs, which are vitally important in this field. And in your organization, there is somebody who is responsible for in-house training activities like that. And if you have a system through which that all the assessment kind of sheets go to this person, he or she can immediately see where are the things that you need to be more, you need to have more training, and then it's up to the organization to take care of your training. So it has very many dimensions which can be very useful. Well, and of course, you could ask whether there can be a quality label or qualification for this one. And my final element was accountability, which is vitally important because there are people who put money to us, and we use this word, and we need to have a tool through which we show them that the money invested in this work has been well invested. So that's vitally important. Then finally, I'm already in the next slide. There are two things that I would just like to discuss in this context. And as Veronica told you, we have been looking at the vast look at different kind of already existing assessment schemes, models, like those from the formal education, which are very sophisticated and very well tested and comprehensive and all that. So the question is the formal education assessment model adaptable to youth work, or should a youth work assessment model be based on a non-formal learning concept? So this is the question that we still discuss. Apparently, we don't want to invent the wheel again, and we had to see what's in the formal education models for us. But to what extent should we modify our model rather looking at the specific non-formal learning concept, which we argue that is very different from the formal education learning model. So that's just a question that you may perhaps in the working groups discuss further. Finally, my final question is that if you prepare a self-assessment model for digital youth work, it is as such absolutely applicable also for peer assessment. So and then you could add up the external evaluation element to the assessment. And just to finish, for example, in Finland, we have a system where we have a little bit similar assessment model, but for youth work in general, where we have, for example, the youth center, which asks the neighboring youth center to come to their center and use this model to evaluate the youth work in this youth center. And then the youth work center evaluated goes to the other place, and they exchange views. And the practice has been shown that this is a very kind of an excellent model for promoting peer learning, which is one of the big objectives that we have today. So I think there are a lot of good reasons, but we also are kind of in the stage where we need to have more kind of approaches, inputs, critics, ideas about where should we go, because as Veronica told, we are just halfway. So all your reactions on, for example, these kind of questions will be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lasse. Just stay a little bit more with us, because I will have another question for you, and it will be the last one for our session. What do you think could be more strategic steps we should look at from now on? So for now, we have some proposals, right? And let's assume we will finalize this process where we will have a self-assessment or peer assessment tool for youth workers, self-verification tool for youth workers. We will have an assessment tool for youth work organizations. What would be the strategic steps, one or two, that you think should be in mind of the stakeholders, of the people who join us today? It can be anything from other measures that could complement these tools, or things that can be done to ensure that these tools are used. So how do you think? What would be one or two recommendations that you'd have for us?
I think due to time limitations, maybe I just stick to one which I found important. I mean, we have been making a lot of advancement in kind of looking at the formal education models and all those models like the Verta model and others which have been kind of elaborated based on that. But there is something kind of recent and new that has happened that is not, in my mind, enough reflected there. And there I would need your kind of opinions about whether that kind of things would be also included in the competencies, in the assessment schemes, and whether that would be something essential. And that kind of concerns the kind of the content of this assessment. It's very strong on access, skills, infrastructure, and things like that. But and notice that's important because we know that digital technology is essential for us. It's an essential catalyst for social and economic development. It brings huge well-being for young people and interest in them and all that. And that's why we need to invest in access and the infrastructure and the technical skills and all that for young people to make use of all those opportunities. But just being, for example, inspired by Jane Melvin's lecture yesterday, he talked, for example, about identity in use in digital media. And at the same time, she was a little bit worried about the young people's authenticity in the digital world, because there are a lot of different kind of peer pressures coming from the different platforms, and all not kind of promoting a positive identity development, some even detrimental to the mental development of young people. And there is misinformation. This also kind of leads young people somewhere wrong, and there's manipulation. There's also things like these. And then actually you could broaden the picture and agree, particularly today, that there are many effects of digitalization that in broad terms concern young people, like the weakening of democracy. That has partly happened because of digitalization. There has been shrinking of the civil space, the space where young people are supposed to be active, like the youth organizations. That's been shrinking. partly because of digitalization. There are violations of human rights, conflicts between interest of the big technology and young people. There is manipulation of us and young people as consumers, as voters, and so on. And there are increasing detrimental effects on the physical, mental, and social health of young people, which are compiling as we speak. So I think we should also, when we think of the contents of that, we should also think whether we should include these broader ethical issues in the picture and see how youth work should address these ones. What would youth workers' competencies be to be able to make young people aware of these developments and the role of young people in these kind of things, just as one side of it. So there is.
Thank you.
The coin
Yeah,
of
thank
two
you,
sides.
Lasse. A lot of food for thought, many points on the agenda, yes, and again, it's still part of the discussion as we are in the middle of it. Thank you, Lasse. Thank you so much. Michele, same question for you. What would be one or two things, in short?
Yes, there are many recommendations that we added, and you can read in the report draft, but one or two of them is that having a framework for organization could be a starting point for recognition of the role of the general youth work role, especially in countries and situations where the recognition is not still fully achieved, and also can be a way for national agencies, for instance, to have a priority path, let's say, for accreditation, for quality labels, for these kind of marks for organizations which are a bit ahead in the process. And many more could be installed that you can find in the report as I mentioned.
Thank you, Michele. Indeed, the report will stay with you, and for those who don't have it, it will be shared. At this moment, we are also looking to integrate the discussions that we are having during these days, because we are proposing now to work on a competence model for youth workers, and that is scaling up what we identify that works and might be improved, a self-assessment tool or a peer self-assessment tool for youth workers, a self-verification tool, the test, but also a competence framework and assessment tool for organizations. But these are first initial steps. After that, we'll have to focus a little bit more on how to use them in a meaningful way without being overwhelmed of all the other things a youth worker and an organization has to do, but also speaking about the recognition of these competencies acquired in the sector and assessed through these kind of tools. So I think it's a joint effort we have to look through. It's a policy, it's a practice field as well. So we have to combine efforts and look through the more strategic approach. But I think the key note I would like to end with is that we are not anymore living in an improvised situation. And while so far many of us might have been considered quite skilled and competent in just managing digital tools, in planning digital processes, I think it's a time also to stop now and assess that. And with that meaningful assessment, we can also move forward to more advanced things. So I think it's also about not being complacent where we are and being happy with what we have, but how to improve that. And it's always what youth workers have done, because if something they have tried, it was always doing their best, being there. And another thing, we will never replace the meaning, the core values of youth work. On the contrary, we're adding something more. The values stay the same, but approaches might need some change. The physical will be there, but the online, the digital, which is more than online, will be needed always. So it's not a crisis, it's not a momentum, it's the reality. So it's not the new normal, it's just the reality. Thank you so much. And with this, I pass the floor to our wonderful facilitators, Antti and Snezhana, please.
Thank you, Veronica and Michele and Lasse. We was just chatting with Antti a little bit about what Veronica said. We don't live in improvised times anymore. This event at times looks a little bit like we are, but indeed we do agree that even though sometimes these things happened, improvisation is part of the competences, so we definitely fully support the need to look a bit more structured in the competences, capacities, and so on. So hopefully this wonderful trio gave you some food for thought, because now it's already becoming a tradition. We would like to send you into smaller groups with our wonderful facilitators who are also super skilled in adjusting and flexibility and improvisation, where you will have a chance to go through different topics that were addressed by Michele, Lasse, and Veronica. So basically, unlike yesterday, if you were there with us yesterday, each group will have its particular topic. Yeah, so it wouldn't be kind of a common set of questions, but a particular topic that you will be addressing. You will be assigned randomly by Domagoj, but all the topics are connected to Work Package 2, so you should be able to work with them. There is one that will be dealing with the needs of youth workers for self-assessment tools and how to actually use them better. There will be another group that will be dealing with needs and motivations of youth organizations, also how to use competence models and self-validation tools. There is a group on quality in digital youth work, and finally on recognition and validation. And as you see, these topics were not just raised here, but also we are kind of taking them from yesterday as well, because they were already kind of coming up in the inputs, but also in the work group discussions. Yeah, and with this, those participants who are going to Zoom, we would like to welcome you to travel back to Domagoj, who will then do his magic and assign you to different rooms and put you in the hands of our capable facilitators. And we would like to thank those who are watching us on the YouTube stream for doing so. And we look forward to seeing you once again. And with this, a little reminder that at 12:05 Central European Time, we are going to have a study visit live here from Oulu. So if you would like some company during your lunchtime, do click on the stream once again. Yeah, is that okay? Do you want to do the thumbs up now without them? Exactly, that's the way to do it. So thank you very much, and Domagoj, now they're in your hands.
We can see ourselves. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hopefully you can hear us. Hello and thanks for having us here. We are here to talk about our project, and I am Mikko Ylimäki, and
my name is Kati Hopiavuori, and we both work in Peliliike-hanke project.
So this Peliliike, it can be translated to game mode for youth work, and it is funded by European Social Fund and Oulu City. And the operation time lasts from March 20 to August 23.
So we've been around for about a year now, and how we ended up in this particular project, we are both kind of geeky. We enjoy video gaming and digital gaming and Dungeons and Dragons and all that nerdy stuff. And also we both have some experience in working in the field of youth work and social work. And today we were asked to tell you about our project, and we hope that this short speech will give you some ideas and some kind of tips how to try out new things in digital youth work. And the focus is on giving the spotlight to the young people and participating young people.
And I hope they can see the new dia now. Yeah. I hope they can also see ourselves. No, good.
Great.
So, our Peliliike project's target group is 15 to 29-year-old youngsters in Oulu and professionals working among young people. And the main core or the keywords of our project is social participation.
And when we're talking about social participation, it's a very big and important part of well-being and wellness. And it means that the person has the feeling that they are part of something, social communities, and they can have their voice heard. And it's a very important part of growing and aging as well. And it's the person's involvement to social activities. And in our project, we aim to have or make possible 20 different pilot projects. And those projects are supposed to make young people especially feel like they are involved and they are being part of something, and their voice is heard, and they can bring up their own ideas and bring them to practice.
So the main goal for our Peliliike project is to participate young people themselves and bring up the skills they have gained from non-formal sources, such as gaming and other hobbies they have.
So skills they have gained during their spare time, and we try to connect those to digital youth work or developing digital youth work and the skills that the young people have, bring them together. And all these 20 pilot projects we're going to have is going around digital youth work. And that's the thing that has to be involved in those projects. So social participation and digital youth work.
Those are the words. So the way how we seek these 20 pilot projects is through innovation competition. And well, basically we could just say that it actually is just a soft version of Shark Tank. And the panel is composed of young people and youth workers.
So the panel evaluates those project proposals we get from organizations, that they truly are innovative and interesting for young people. And Mikko and I, we are not part of the panel, but we do our best to support those organizations to build and plan those project proposals they give to us. And we name this innovation competition the Skillimylly, and it can be translated to skill mill, but we're going to be talking about Skillimylly because it's more natural for us.
Yeah.
And so Skillimylly and skill projects.
It was quite easy for us to choose this innovation competition as a way to fulfill our project goals. Our organization, City of Oulu, has previous experiences in similar ways of participation. And one example is the chaos method for urban development. And this chaos method was awarded in Eurocities back in 2018. So that's why it was quite easy for us to base our project on that.
Yeah. So basically and briefly, Skillimylly is a way to participate young people to evaluate activities that are aimed to young people. So grown-ups are not saying what the young people want to do. And next we have a little presentation, video presentation about how Skillimylly works, and we will explain it a bit more after the video. But we are so excited to show you guys this video because you are part of our premiere. You're the first ones to see this video, so really excited about it. So.
This is Lisu. Lisu is part of an organisation with the enthusiasm and, above all, the skills to develop digital youth work. That's why the team has decided to take part in the Skillimylly Innovation Contest. Lisu's team has a brilliant new idea to organise a completely new kind of activity for young people in Oulu, utilising the opportunities offered by digitalisation. Young people should have an active part in the implementation of the projects, since the main aim of Skilly projects is to participate young people from the city of Oulu. Lisu's team has found ways to involve young people already in the planning phase. Pelileka workers will be on hand throughout the contest. They will support you in planning your team's project and the writing of the application in Skillimylly. The completed application will be submitted to the panel composed of young people and youth workers for evaluation. The most inspiring and feasible projects will be accepted as Skilly projects, which will receive up to €5,000 in support from Pelileka. In addition to financial support, Skillimylly helps to develop the team's activities through feedback and experience. Hey, Lisu's team did it. Why wouldn't you too? So join us in developing meaningful and inclusive digital youth work.
Great. So, in short, that's the idea of Skillimylly, and that's how it works. And as you saw in the video, Mikko and I, we are not part of implementing the projects, or we are not taking active part in planning those projects. Our job is to support and facilitate those organizations who are giving the project proposals.
We hope that this Skillimylly will increase the participation of young people in Oulu while developing new methods for digital youth work. And we also hope that this €5,000 which skill projects will have for implementation of the activity of project will encourage organizations to try out new activities with youngsters. And next.
As you saw in the video, those colorful boxes in the beginning, those are our themes for those projects. And all those projects has to associate with one of those themes. And those teams were put together with youngsters from Oulu about a year ago, and they all associate with digital youth work in some level. We talked about how we are into gaming and how the game mode is in our name, but digital youth work is so much more than just gaming. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through all of those 5 themes right now, but if you're interested, we're very glad to talk about them later. You can contact us after our speech.
So as it has been said, we have a panel in this Skillimylly, and because we want to find such a projects which truly interest young people, we have this panel for that reason. And we can't just let adults decide, or should I say we can't let adults guess which projects could actually work with youngsters. So all these project proposals, which we will get in Skillimylly, all of them will be assessed by this panel, which is composed of young people and youth workers. So in other words, me and Kati, we don't and can't decide which of these project proposals will be put to action. It's up to this panel to decide.
Yeah.
And we hope that especially the youngest of these panelists, they could look at these project proposals in the panel with the thought that would I take myself part of this project action?
So ideally the young people have an active leading part in planning and implementing those projects. And the task of the participating grown-ups and the adults that come from the organizations is to support those young people. And we hope that those adults won't be micromanaging the project implementation, so the young people get to have the opportunity to try out their wings and try new stuff and so on. And it's still okay to take part to Skillemylly innovation competition without having that group of young people taking part of the planning process, as long as the project plan includes the involvement of those young people to the action part of the project.
And something about the skill project so far. Three of these are already done, and rest of them are upcoming.
So we will lift 3 of these projects we have so far, and the first one is hashtag Älä sano läpällä, which is translated to hashtag Don't Joke About It. It's a group of young girls coming together, and in this project they were planning some kind of media project, and the theme was positive online culture. So all of these girls had experienced some sort of toxic behavior on social media. And the organization behind this project is the Girls House in Oulu, and that Girls House is a multicultural meeting place for young girls and women aged from 13 to 29. And during all this project and these group gatherings, the girls got to decide what they wanted to talk about, what they wanted to do, and the Girls House employee was there to support these girls.
Well, then one more example. We have this Pelaamista kaikille, which can be translated to gaming for everyone. So in this project, it was planned by Luovi students, and Luovi is a special education school which teaches young people and adults in here Oulu area. So these Luovi students, they planned a project where they aim to organize leisure time activities for other students of Luovi. But the, I could say the spice and the innovation in this project is that these, with the support of the organization, these students want to arrange such a video gaming activity which is accessible for everyone. And for example, they could try Microsoft Adaptive Controllers in this project. And if I have understood right, these students also want to teach thing or two about video gaming as a hobby to the Luovi teachers.
And instructors, yeah. Yeah. And then one more. Let's pick the Digi Kepposet, which we translated to digital dancing because we didn't know how to translate Kepposet. But so Taikaboxi is an organization behind this project, and they work in Oulunsalo in Oulu, and they are dedicated to creating new ways to experience dancing. And then this other group called Kepposet, these are a group of young people, and they contacted Taikaboxi. This Kepposet group, their hobby is folk dancing. So in this project, they are planning to put together this specific hobby, which in this case is folk dancing and technology. So the sky is the limit. And you can, like Mikko said, we hope that this support of 5,000 euros and the support from us and the city of Oulu is encouraging them to try something completely new and completely out of this world, so they can have the comfort to safely try something new.
But in short, we hope that this short speech of ours give you some sort of insight how we have participated young people in Oulu city. And we hope that this also gave some ideas how to participate young in your own activities also.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. We hope that we gave you some new ideas and how you can connect the participation of young people to digital or developing digital youth work with trying all new stuff. And if you have any questions or thoughts about our projects, if you want to hear more about these Skilly projects, you should follow us on Instagram, which is @peliliike. And you can also send us email or phone us and send us DMs in Instagram if you wish to know something new.
And if there's now some questions at the stream chat, we will next go to check out them and we will try our best to answer to the chat if that's possible. But that's all.
Yes, thank you for having us. This was
Thanks
fun.
for having us.